Maya had become an expert at being invisible. Not the kind of invisible where people looked right through you with pity, but the kind where you simply didn't register on anyone's radar at all. She preferred it that way. Every morning she arrived at Riverside High exactly 17 minutes before the first bell. Not 15, not 20. 17 minutes gave her enough time to slip into her first class before the hallways filled with the usual chaos of lockers slamming and friends shouting to each other across the corridor. She'd choose her seat carefully, always in the back corner, never in the middle where teachers might call on her more often, and never by the windows where she might accidentally make eye contact with someone outside. This Tuesday morning was no different. The autumn air was crisp and fallen leaves crunched under her worn sneakers as she walked through the school's front gates. A few early birds were scattered around, but nobody paid her any attention. She liked it that way. Her backpack was heavy with textbooks, but she'd learned to carry the weight without showing any strain. Everything about Maya was practiced, controlled, deliberate. Her first class was physics with Mr. Chen, a middle-aged teacher with kind eyes who'd stopped trying to get her to participate in class discussions about 6 months ago. He'd learned that Maya would do excellent work on her own terms, turning in assignments that were always thorough and thoughtful, but she wouldn't raise her hand. She wouldn't volunteer. She wouldn't engage. As students filtered in, Maya kept her eyes on her notebook, doodling small geometric patterns in the margins. She'd developed this habit over the years, a way to look busy, to give the impression that she was too absorbed in something important to be interrupted. The truth was, she was hyper-aware of everything happening around her. She heard the whispers, the gossip, the planning of weekend parties she'd never be invited to. She noticed who sat with whom, who'd had a fight, who was dating who. But she observed it all from a distance, like watching a movie she wasn't part of. The bell rang. Mr. Chen started talking about momentum and force, writing equations on the whiteboard with his usual enthusiasm. Maya copied everything down meticulously, her handwriting small and neat. She understood the concepts easily, but when Mr. Chen asked the class a question, her eyes stayed fixed on her paper. Let someone else answer. Let someone else be seen. Lunch period was perhaps the most carefully choreographed part of Maya's day. While most students rushed to the cafeteria to claim tables with their friends, Maya took the long route to the library. She'd pack her lunch from home. Simple sandwiches and an apple, nothing that required heating up or made strong smells. The library was her sanctuary, a place where being alone didn't look strange. Everyone in a library was alone in some way, absorbed in books or studying. Here she could blend in perfectly. The librarian, Mrs. Peterson, had stopped asking if Maya needed help finding anything. She'd simply nod when Maya came in, a small acknowledgement that said, "I see you, but I won't bother you." Maya appreciated that more than the woman probably knew. She'd eat slowly, taking small bites while reading whatever book she'd picked up that week. Currently, it was a mystery novel about a detective who solved crimes by observing tiny details everyone else missed. Maya related to that. She was always noticing things, the way people's voices changed when they were lying, how someone's smile didn't quite reach their eyes when they were upset, the small moments of kindness that happened in the spaces between the drama. The afternoon classes blurred together. English, where they were reading a novel about belonging and identity, which Maya found almost too on the nose. History, where the teacher droned on about events from centuries ago while students passed notes and checked their phones under their desks. Art, which was actually Maya's favorite subject, though she'd never admit it. Here she could express things through drawings and paintings that she'd never say out loud. Finally, the last bell rang. This was the trickiest part of Maya's day. If she left too quickly, she'd get caught in the stampede of students rushing to freedom. If she waited too long, she'd look like she was lingering, hoping someone might talk to her. She'd learned to time it perfectly. She packed her things slowly, organizing her folders and zipping her backpack with careful precision. Mr. Chen was grading papers at his desk, barely looking up. A few stragglers chatted by the door, but they filtered out within minutes. Maya counted to 30 in her head, then stood up. The hallway was nearly empty now, just how she liked it. Her footsteps echoed against the linoleum floors, a sound that might make some people feel lonely but made Maya feel safe. No one to avoid, no one to pretend with, just her and the quiet. She adjusted her earbuds, scrolling through her phone to find the right song. Music was her constant companion, a soundtrack to her solitary life. She knew every lyric, every beat drop, every instrumental break of her favorite songs. They were like friends who never let her down, never betrayed her, never made her feel like she wasn't enough. As she approached the main doors, late afternoon sunlight streamed through the glass, creating patterns on the floor. She paused for just a moment, appreciating the way the light caught the dust particles floating in the air. Beautiful things happened when no one was watching. She'd learned that over the years. Maya pushed through the heavy doors, feeling the cool October air hit her face. She took a deep breath, already planning her evening. Homework. Dinner with her mom, who'd ask the usual questions and accept the usual vague answers. Maybe some drawing before bed. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she stepped out into the fading daylight, was that someone had been waiting. Someone who'd noticed her. Really noticed her. In ways she hadn't been noticed in years. Someone who'd been gathering courage for weeks, rehearsing words, planning this exact moment. But Maya, lost in her music and her carefully constructed solitude, had no idea that today was different. She had no idea that her invisible world was about to become visible to someone else. She simply walked forward, alone as always, into whatever came next. Alex had been standing under the old oak tree for 20 minutes, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He'd told himself this morning that today was the day. He'd promised himself last week that today was the day. Actually, he'd been promising himself for nearly 3 months now, and if he didn't do it today, he might never find the courage again. The worn notebook pressed against his chest felt like both a shield and a weight. Its pages were filled with sketches, observations, half-formed ideas that made sense in his head but seemed foolish when he imagined saying them out loud. Especially to her. Especially to someone who clearly didn't want to be noticed. Alex wasn't exactly popular, but he wasn't invisible either. He existed in that middle space where people knew his name, waved to him in hallways, included him in group projects without complaint. He floated between different circles, never quite belonging to any of them completely. The artists thought he was too quiet. The quiet kids thought he was too artistic. The athletes tolerated him because he helped them pass math. He was everyone's acquaintance and no one's best friend. But he was okay with that. Mostly it had started 3 months ago during a school assembly. One of those mandatory gatherings where administrators talked about test scores and upcoming events, while students scrolled through their phones or whispered to friends. Alex had been sitting with some guys from his art class, not really paying attention to anything in particular. When he'd looked up at the bleachers, that's when he saw her. Maya. Sitting alone at the very top row, far from everyone else, completely absorbed in a book. While hundreds of students around her fidgeted and chatted and complained about being there, she was in her own world. And then, just for a moment, she'd smiled. Not at anyone or anything in particular, just smiled at whatever she was reading. It was such a genuine, unguarded expression that Alex found himself staring. He'd always known who Maya was, of course. They'd shared classes over the years, been paired up for group projects a handful of times where she'd do her part efficiently and without fuss. But he'd never really seen her before. Not like that. After that day, he couldn't help but notice her everywhere. Not in a creepy way, he told himself, but in the way you suddenly see something that was always there once someone points it out. Like how you never notice a particular car until you're thinking of buying it. Then you see it on every street. He saw her in the library during lunch, always at the same table near the back corner. He saw her at Joe's coffee shop on Wednesday afternoons, sitting by the window with her sketchbook. He saw her taking the long way around buildings to avoid crowds, saw her waiting in empty classrooms until the hallways cleared. She had created an entire invisible routine, and somehow he'd become aware of all of it. The thing that fascinated Alex most wasn't just that she was alone. Plenty of people were alone. What struck him was that she seemed to have chosen it deliberately. There was something intentional about her solitude, something protective. It made him curious about the story behind it, about who she'd been before she'd built these walls around herself. 2 weeks ago, his art teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, had assigned a project that seemed like fate. Unseen perspectives, she'd called it. Create a piece of art that shows the world from a viewpoint people don't usually consider. The overlooked, the ignored, the invisible made visible. Alex had known immediately what he wanted to do, or rather, who he wanted to talk to about it. Because if anyone understood unseen perspectives, it was Maya. But approaching her felt impossible. You don't just walk up to someone who spent years perfecting the art of being left alone and strike up a conversation. That felt like a violation of something, like barging into someone's house uninvited. Still, the project deadline was approaching, and Alex had barely started. More than that, he genuinely wanted to know what Maya saw when she looked at the world from her careful distance. He wanted to understand what made someone choose invisibility, so he'd made a plan. He'd noticed that she always left school late after everyone else had gone. She'd come out those main doors around 4 o'clock, earbuds in, lost in her music, and he'd be waiting here, under this tree where he could talk to her without an audience. Private, respectful, easy to walk away from if she wanted to. Now, standing here, the plan felt ridiculous. What was he going to say? "Hi, I've been watching you for months?" That sounded terrible. "I think you're interesting?" That sounded condescending. "Want to help with my art project?" That sounded like he was using her. Alex rehearsed different openings in his head. Casual, friendly, not weird. Maybe he should mention the project first. No, that seemed too transactional. Maybe he should ask about her day. No, too generic. Maybe he should comment on the weather. God, no, that was the worst. A group of students burst out of the side entrance laughing about something. Alex tensed, but they headed toward the parking lot without even glancing his way. The school was emptying out. She'd be coming soon. His heart started beating faster. This was stupid. This was a mistake. She was going to think he was creepy or desperate or both. She was going to tell him to leave her alone. And then he'd see her in the hallways for the rest of the year, knowing he'd made her uncomfortable. But then Alex thought about that smile he'd seen 3 months ago, that unguarded moment of genuine happiness. He thought about all the sketches in her notebook margins that he'd glimpsed during group projects, tiny, perfect drawings of things no one else was looking at. He thought about how sometimes the most interesting people were the ones everyone overlooked. He could do this. It was just a conversation. People had conversations every day. Normal, regular conversations that didn't mean anything big or dramatic, except this felt big. This felt like it mattered in a way he couldn't quite explain. The main doors opened and Alex's breath caught. But it was just a teacher, Ms. Patterson from the English department, carrying a box of papers. She nodded at him absently and headed to her car. Alex looked down at his notebook again, at the sketches he'd made of the school from unusual angles. The view from under the bleachers where the maintenance staff stored equipment. The cafeteria seen through the kitchen's serving window. The hallway reflected in the trophy case glass. All these perspectives that existed but went unnoticed. He'd included one sketch of the library table where Maya always sat, drawn from the perspective of someone walking past. In the drawing, she was a small figure in the background, easy to miss if you weren't looking for her. But he'd drawn her with careful detail, trying to capture that quality of intentional solitude. Was that creepy? Maybe he shouldn't show her that page. The doors opened again. This time it was her. Maya stepped out into the afternoon light, adjusting her backpack, one hand already reaching for her phone. She looked tired but peaceful, ready to leave another day behind her. Alex's mouth went dry. His carefully rehearsed words evaporated from his mind. This was it. The now or never. Speak or let another day go by. He stepped forward, his voice barely working. "Maya?" She stopped, pulled out one earbud, turned toward him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Surprise, caution, maybe a flicker of something else. This was happening. After 3 months of noticing, of wondering, of planning, this moment was actually happening. And Alex had absolutely no idea what he was going to say next. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Maya with one earbud dangling against her shoulder, Alex clutching his notebook like it might save him from drowning. The silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy. Maya's first instinct was to put the earbud back in, mumble something about being late, and walk away. That's what she'd trained herself to do over the years. Avoid, deflect, disappear. But something about the way Alex was looking at her, nervous but determined, made her pause. "Yeah?" she said, her voice coming out more defensive than she'd intended. Alex's words tumbled out in a rush, nothing like the calm, casual opening he'd rehearsed. "I know this is going to sound really weird, and I promise I'm not trying to be creepy or anything, but I've noticed that you're really good at observing things. Like the way you sketch in the margins of your notebooks, and how you always seem to find the quiet spots in school. And I'm working on this art project about perspectives that people don't usually see, and I thought maybe you might—" He stopped himself, realizing he was rambling. He took a breath and tried again. Sorry, that came out wrong. Can I start over? Maya shifted her weight, still wary but slightly less ready to bolt. You've been noticing me? The way she said it wasn't flattered. It was careful, suspicious, like someone who'd learned the hard way that being noticed wasn't always a good thing. Not in a weird way, Alex said quickly. I just mean, we've had classes together and I've seen your drawings. During that group project in English last year, you drew this whole detailed border of tiny flowers around your notes, and they were really good. I'm in art class, and Ms. Rodriguez assigned this project about unseen perspectives, and I just thought. He trailed off, feeling like he was making it worse with every word. Maya remembered that group project. She'd been paired with Alex and two other students who'd done most of the talking, while she'd quietly completed her portions. She hadn't realized anyone had noticed her drawings. She certainly hadn't meant for them to be noticed. What kind of project? She asked, surprising herself. The smart thing would be to walk away. The safe thing would be to make an excuse. But there was something genuine in Alex's nervousness that made her curious despite herself. Relief flooded Alex's face. She was asking. She hadn't left. That was something. It's called Unseen Perspectives, he explained, opening his notebook with shaking hands. We're supposed to create art that shows the world from viewpoints people don't usually consider. Like seeing the everyday from a completely different angle. He showed her some of his sketches. The school cafeteria from behind the lunch counter. The hallway reflected and distorted in the trophy case. The view from the janitor's closet looking out through the small window. Maya looked at the drawings, really looked at them. They were good. Better than good. They captured something about the school that she'd felt but never seen expressed. The loneliness of empty spaces. The strangeness of familiar places seen from unfamiliar angles. These are really good, she said and meant it. Alex's face lit up.
Thanks, but I feel like I'm missing something.
Like I'm drawing places that are overlooked, but I don't really understand what it means to be overlooked. Does that make sense? It made more sense than he probably knew. Maya found herself looking at him differently. Not as an interruption to her routine, but as someone who might actually understand something about the way she saw the world. Why me? She asked. Why not ask someone else? Alex hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Because you see things. I've noticed it. The way you look at stuff that other people just walk past. You're always observing, always paying attention, and I guess I wondered what you see that the rest of us miss. Maya felt something crack inside her, just a little. It had been so long since someone had tried to see past her walls. So long since anyone had suggested that her perspective might be valuable rather than just strange. I don't really do group projects, she said, but her voice was softer now, less defensive. It wouldn't really be a group project, Alex said, more like a conversation. I just want to understand how you see things, what you notice, what it's like to... He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence without sounding insulting. To be invisible? Maya finished for him. I wasn't going to say that. But it's true. Maya surprised herself by continuing. I've spent the last 3 years being invisible. On purpose. And yeah, I notice things. You notice a lot when nobody's looking at you. Alex lowered himself to sit on the low wall that bordered the parking lot, giving her space. After a moment, Maya sat too, keeping a careful distance between them. Can I ask why? Alex said. Why you choose to be invisible? Maya's instinct was to shut down the question, to give some vague answer and change the subject. But she was tired. Tired of carrying the weight of her story alone. And there was something about this boy, this almost stranger, that felt safe in a way she couldn't explain. Something happened freshman year, she said, staring at her hands. I tried to fit in. Tried really hard. There was this group of girls who seemed cool, and I thought maybe they liked me. They invited me to sit with them at lunch, included me in their conversations, even invited me to a party. Alex waited, not pushing, just listening. Turns out it was a joke. The whole thing. They were seeing how long they could string me along, how much they could get me to believe they actually wanted me around. At the party, they made that very clear, in front of everyone. Maya's voice stayed steady, but Alex could hear the old hurt underneath it. After that, I decided it was easier to be alone on purpose than to risk being alone by accident. If I'm invisible by choice, then nobody can hurt me. I'm sorry, Alex said. That's really messed up. It was 3 years ago. I'm over it. But the way she said it suggested she wasn't. Not completely. Some wounds heal, but leave scars. They sat in silence for a moment. A car pulled out of the parking lot. A bird called from somewhere in the trees. The world continued around them. For what it's worth, Alex said quietly, I don't think you're as invisible as you think you are. Maya looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean, I see you, not just today but before, and I bet other people do too. Maybe they just don't know how to approach you. Maybe they think you want to be left alone. I do want to be left alone. Do you? Or do you want to be left alone? Because those are different things. Maya didn't have an answer for that. It was a question she'd been avoiding asking herself for 3 years. Alex opened his notebook again, flipping to a different page. Can I show you something? He turned the notebook toward her. It was a sketch of the library, drawn from the perspective of someone walking past. And there, at a back table, was a small figure. Her. I drew this last week, Alex said. It's the library from the hallway. And I realized something while I was drawing it. You're not invisible. You're just in the background. And sometimes the background is the most interesting part of the picture. Maya stared at the drawing. He'd captured her perfectly, the way she sat with her shoulders curved over her book, her hair falling to hide her face. She looked small in the drawing, but not lonely, just separate, apart. That's how you see me? She asked. That's how I see everyone missing you, Alex said. You're right there, but nobody's looking. And that seems like their loss, not yours. Something shifted in Maya's chest. Not fixed, not healed, but loosened. Like a knot she'd been carrying had been pulled just a little bit looser. So what do you want from me? She asked. For your project? Honestly, I don't know exactly. Maybe just to talk, to understand what you see when you look at the school, at people, at the spaces everyone else ignores. Maybe to collaborate on something. Create art that shows what being unseen actually means. Maya pulled out her own notebook from her backpack. She'd never shown it to anyone before. Inside were her own drawings, small detailed sketches of things no one else paid attention to. The pattern of shoe prints tracked across a wet hallway. The way light came through the library windows at different times of day. The expressions people wore when they thought no one was watching. She opened it slowly and showed Alex a page. His eyes widened. These are incredible. Maya, these are really incredible. They're just observations, she said, but she felt a small warmth at his reaction. They're more than that. They're proof that you see things. Real things. Important. Things that everyone else misses because they're too busy being seen. They sat there as the sun got lower. Two people who usually walked alone, looking at each other's art and beginning to understand that maybe, just maybe, they'd found someone who saw the world the same way. The sun was getting lower in the sky, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. Maya glanced at her phone and realized they'd been sitting on that wall for nearly an hour. An hour. She couldn't remember the last time she'd talked to someone her age for a whole hour. Alex was pointing to one of her sketches, a detailed drawing, of the cafeteria from the perspective of someone standing in the lunch line. She'd captured the backs of heads, the way people clustered in their groups, the empty spaces between tables where no one ever sat. This is exactly what I'm trying to show, he said, excitement building in his voice. You've documented the geography of belonging. Look at these gaps between the tables. Those aren't just empty spaces, they're borders, territories. And most people don't even realize they exist because they've always had a table to sit at. Maya looked at her drawing with fresh eyes. She'd sketched it during a particularly long lunch period, more to pass time than anything else. But Alex was right. She had been documenting something even if she hadn't fully realized it. I never thought about it that way, she admitted. I was just drawing what I saw. That's what makes it powerful, Alex said. You're not trying to make a point. You're just showing the truth. And the truth is that schools have these invisible rules about where you can sit, who you can talk to, what makes you belong or not belong. Maya felt her guard lowering bit by bit. It was strange, talking about these things she'd kept locked inside for so long. Strange but also kind of relieving, like finally putting down a heavy bag she'd been carrying. Can I ask you something? she said. Sure. Why aren't you like this? Why don't you have these problems? You seem to get along with everyone. Alex laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I get along with everyone because I don't really connect with anyone. I'm friends with the art kids, but they think I'm too quiet. I help the athletes with homework, but I'm not one of them. I eat lunch with whoever has space at their table, but nobody would notice if I wasn't there. But that's different from being alone, Maya said. Is it? Sometimes I think being alone in a crowd is worse than being alone by yourself. At least when you're by yourself, it's honest. Maya had never considered it from that angle. She'd always assumed that the people who seemed to fit in actually felt like they belonged. The idea that someone like Alex, who moved through different groups so easily, might feel just as disconnected as she did was surprising. So we're both invisible, she said, just in different ways. Maybe that's why I wanted to talk to you. You chose it. I'm curious what that's like to take control of your invisibility instead of just letting it happen to you. They fell into a comfortable silence, both looking at their notebooks. Maya found herself really examining Alex's drawings now. They were technically skilled, but more than that, they showed real thought. He'd chosen angles that made familiar spaces feel strange and new. Your art teacher, Maya said. When's this project due? 2 weeks. And you want me to help you? Alex hesitated. Help feels like the wrong word. Collaborate, maybe? Like, what if we combined our perspectives? Your observations of the spaces people overlook, and my technique for showing them in new ways. We could create something that really captures what it means to be unseen. Maya's old instincts flared up. Collaboration meant depending on someone. It meant vulnerability. It meant risk. Every time she'd trusted someone before, it had ended badly. But then she looked at Alex's face, earnest and nervous and hopeful, and she thought about how he'd been brave enough to wait for her, how he'd seen her art and called it incredible, how he understood at least a little bit what it felt like to exist in the margins. I don't know, she said honestly. I haven't really worked with anyone in a long time. By choice. I get that, and if you say no, I completely understand. But I think we could make something really special together. Something that matters. Maya thought about her routine, her carefully constructed walls, her safe and solitary life. It worked. It protected her, but sometimes late at night she wondered what she was protecting herself from anymore. The girls who'd hurt her had graduated last year. The other students at school didn't even know she existed. She was safe, yes, but she was also frozen in place, still living in the fear of something that had already happened. What would it even look like, she asked. This collaboration? Alex's face brightened. I've been thinking about that. What if we created a series of perspectives? Show the school through the eyes of people who exist in the spaces between. We could do drawings, maybe some photography, even written observations, like a documentation project of the invisible. That sounds like a lot of work. It would be. But good art usually is. Maya flipped through her notebook again. She had pages and pages of observations, years of seeing and documenting and understanding the social architecture of her school. What if that all meant something? What if it could become something more than just her private way of processing her isolation? Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, take all the time you need. Alex pulled out his phone. Can I give you my number? Just so you can let me know what you decide. No pressure. Maya hesitated, then pulled out her own phone. They exchanged numbers, and Maya was surprised by how normal it felt. Like something regular people did all the time, which of course it was. But she wasn't regular people. Or at least she hadn't been for 3 years. I should probably get home, she said, standing up. The sky was definitely getting darker now. Her mom would be starting to worry. Yeah, me too. Alex stood as well, gathering his notebook. Thanks for not running away when I ambushed you after school. I was about 70% sure you'd tell me to get lost. Maya almost smiled. I thought about it. What stopped you? She considered the question. Your drawings, I think. They were good. And you seemed like you actually cared about seeing things differently. That's rare. You're rare. Alex said, then immediately looked embarrassed. I mean, your perspective is rare. Your art is rare. You know what I mean? Maya did smile then, just a little. I know what you mean. They started walking toward the parking lot together, a strange new feeling settling over both of them. Not quite friendship yet, but maybe the beginning of something. The possibility of connection. Hey, Maya, Alex said as they reached the edge of school grounds. Yeah? Whatever you decide about the project, I'm glad I talked to you today. I've been wanting to for a while. Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. But as she walked home, her earbuds still in but the music turned down low, she found herself thinking about Alex's drawings. About the way he'd looked at her art like it mattered. About the idea that maybe being seen by the right person wasn't as scary as she'd convinced herself it was. When she got home, her mom was making dinner and asked the usual questions. How was school? Fine. Anything interesting happen? And for the first time in 3 years, Maya paused before giving her usual answer of, not really. I talked to someone, she said instead. About art. Her mom looked up, surprised and pleased. That's nice, honey. A teacher? No, a student. He's working on a project and wanted my input. Her mom's smile grew wider, but she had the wisdom not to make a big deal out of it. Well, that sounds interesting. Let me know how it goes. That night, Maya lay in bed with her notebook looking at all her drawings with new eyes. She'd created all of this alone in private, as a way to make sense of her isolation. But what if isolation wasn't the end of the story? What if it was just a chapter? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, though she knew who it was. Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to say thanks again for today. No pressure on the project, but if you want to talk more about it or about art in general or about anything really, I'm around. Hope you have a good night. Maya read the message 3 times. Her first instinct was not to respond. But that was the old Maya, the one who'd spent 3 years building walls. Maybe it was time to try something different. She typed back, deleted it, typed again. Thanks for showing me your drawings. They're really good. I'll think about the project and let you know. Good night. She hit send before she could change her mind. His response came quickly. That's all I can ask. Sleep well? Maya put her phone down and stared at the ceiling. Something had shifted today. She wasn't sure what it meant yet or where it would lead. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than the dull safety of isolation. She felt curious, interested, maybe even a little bit hopeful. And that was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Maya spent the next 3 days thinking about Alex's offer. She went through her normal routine, arriving early, sitting in the back, eating lunch in the library, leaving late. But now her routine felt different somehow, less like protection and more like habit. And she couldn't stop thinking about what Alex had said about being alone by choice versus being alone by accident. Wednesday afternoon, she found herself at Joe's coffee shop, her usual spot by the window. She'd been coming here for 2 years, always ordering the same thing, a hot chocolate and a blueberry muffin, and always sitting alone with her sketchbook. The barista knew her order but not her name. That's how Maya liked it. Anonymous. Safe. She was drawing the intersection outside, focusing on the crosswalk where people waited for the light to change. Everyone on their phones, in their own worlds, physically together but completely separate. She was so absorbed in capturing the way the afternoon light hit the pavement that she didn't notice when someone approached her table. I thought I might find you here. Maya looked up. Alex stood there with his own sketchbook, looking nervous but determined. How did you know I'd be here? She asked. Alex had the decency to look embarrassed. I didn't, not really. But I've seen you here a few times on Wednesdays. I swear I'm not stalking you. I just remembered and I took a chance. Maya should have been annoyed. She should have felt like her privacy was invaded. But instead she felt something else. Like maybe it was okay to be found sometimes. You can sit, she said, surprising herself. If you want. Alex's face lit up. He ordered a coffee and came back to her table, setting his notebook down carefully. For a moment they just sat there, neither quite sure what to say. So, Alex finally said, have you thought about the project? Maya had thought about little else. I have questions first. Okay, shoot. If I say yes, what does it actually look like? Do we meet up? Work separately? How does collaboration even work? Alex pulled out his phone and opened his notes. I've been thinking about that too. I was thinking we could meet a few times a week, maybe here or at the library. We'd start by sharing our observations, talking about what we see. Then we'd decide together what format works best. Drawings, photography, maybe even a combination. And we'd each bring our strengths. You see things I miss. I have techniques you might not have tried. Together, we'd create something neither of us could make alone. Maya considered this. It was more structured than she'd expected. Less scary somehow. And if it doesn't work out, if I decide I can't do it, then we stop. No hard feelings. I'd never force you to keep working on something that makes you uncomfortable. You've really thought about this. I've thought about it a lot. This project matters to me, but more than that, I think you're the only person who could help me do it right. Anyone else would just be helping me. With you, it would be real collaboration. Equal partners. Equal partners. Maya had never been anyone's equal partner. She'd either been the outsider trying to fit in, or she'd been completely alone. The idea of meeting someone in the middle, of creating something together where both perspectives mattered, was new. I want to show you something, she said, making a decision. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos. I've been taking pictures too, not just drawing. Look, she showed him a series of photographs she'd taken around school, the empty corner behind the gym where kids who didn't fit anywhere else hung out, the way the light came through the dusty windows in the east stairwell that nobody used. A close-up of graffiti carved into a desk in the library, messages from students long graduated talking to the future. Alex looked through each photo carefully, really seeing them. These are amazing. They tell stories. This one with the graffiti. I was here, I mattered. That's everything we're trying to say. I've never shown these to anyone, Maya admitted. I wasn't sure they were good enough. They're more than good enough. Maya, you have a real eye for this. You don't just see things. You understand what they mean. They spent the next 2 hours going through their work, comparing perspectives, finding common themes. Maya found herself talking more than she had in years, explaining her thought process, why she'd captured certain moments, what she'd been trying to understand when she drew particular scenes. Alex listened to everything, asked questions, built on her ideas. He showed her techniques for perspective and shading. She showed him how to find the moments between moments, the spaces where the real stories lived. Okay, Maya said finally, as the sun started to set outside the coffee shop window. I'll do it. I'll collaborate with you on the project. Alex's whole face transformed. Really? You mean it? I mean it. But I have conditions. Name them. We work at our own pace. If I need to step back sometimes, you don't push, and this stays between us. I'm not ready for everyone at school to know about my art or my observations. Not yet. Deal. Absolutely. Whatever you need to feel comfortable. They shook hands awkwardly, then laughed at how formal it was. But the handshake meant something. Promise. A commitment. The beginning of something new. Over the next 10 days, they met 4 times. Once at the coffee shop, twice at the library, and once at the school early on a Saturday morning when the building was empty, and they could photograph the spaces Maya had only drawn before. That Saturday morning was when Maya realized something had changed. She'd expected working with someone else to feel constraining, like she'd have to filter herself or perform in some way. But with Alex, it felt natural. He understood when she needed to just observe in silence. She understood when he needed to work through an idea out loud. They started combining their work. Alex would sketch the basic structure of a scene, and Maya would add the small details that made it real. Maya would photograph a location, and Alex would help her see it from an angle she hadn't considered. They were creating something that was genuinely collaborative, where you couldn't tell where one person's vision ended and the other's began. You know what I just realized? Alex said during one of their library sessions. They were sitting across from each other at Maya's usual table, papers and sketches spread between them. What? This is my first real friendship at this school. Like actual friendship, not just being friendly with people. Maya looked up from the photo she was editing. This is a friendship? Isn't it? We hang out. We talk about real things. We trust each other. That's friendship, right? Maya thought about it. She'd been so focused on the project, on the art, that she hadn't labeled what was happening between them. But Alex was right. Somewhere along the way, they'd become friends. I guess it is, she said. I haven't had a friend in a while. How long? 3 years. Since the thing I told you about happened. Alex put down his pencil. Can I ask you something? And you can tell me if it's too personal? Okay? Do you still think about it? What those girls did? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Every day. Not as much as I used to, but yeah. It's like this thing that's always there in the background. It made me who I am now. The person who doesn't trust easily. The person who walks alone. But you're not walking alone right now. No, I guess I'm not. How does that feel? Maya considered the question honestly. Scary, but also kind of nice. Like maybe I didn't have to build such big walls. Maybe I just needed to find the right person to let in. They worked in comfortable silence for a while after that, but Maya kept thinking about what she'd said. For 3 years, she'd believed that being alone was the only way to stay safe, that trusting people would only lead to more hurt. But Alex had shown her something different. Not everyone was like those girls. Not every connection would end in betrayal. The night before the project was due, Maya got a text from Alex. Want to meet tomorrow morning before school? I think we're almost done, but I want to make sure we're both happy with it. They met at 7 in the morning in the art room. Ms. Rodriguez had given Alex permission to use the space early. Together, they laid out everything they'd created over the past 2 weeks. It was substantial. A series of photographs and drawings showing the school's invisible geography. The spaces between, the corners where the lonely gathered, the sightlines of the overlooked. Each piece had a small caption. Observations about what it meant to exist in the margins. It's really good, Maya said, feeling something like pride. We actually made something meaningful. We did. And I couldn't have done it without you. Alex turned to her. I know you said you didn't want people to know about your art yet. But Maya, this deserves to be seen. Not just by Ms. Rodriguez, by everyone. Fear flickered through her. I don't know if I'm ready for that. What if we presented it anonymously? Or what if I presented it, but told everyone it was a collaboration? You wouldn't have to be in the spotlight, but the work would be out there. Maya looked at their project, really looked at it. It told the truth about what it meant to be unseen. And wasn't that what she'd wanted all along? Not to hide, but to be understood? Let me think about it, she said. The next day in art class, Alex presented their project to Ms. Rodriguez. Maya had decided to stay in the background, literally sitting at a desk in the back of the room while Alex explained their process and vision. Ms. Rodriguez looked at each piece carefully, spending long minutes studying the photographs and drawings. When she finished, she looked at Alex with something like wonder. This is extraordinary work. The perspective, the emotional depth, the way you've captured something essential about the experience of being young and feeling invisible. She paused. But I have to ask, you said this was a collaboration? Alex glanced at Maya. She gave him a small nod. It was. With someone who understands these perspectives better than I ever could. Someone who's been living them. Ms. Rodriguez followed his gaze to Maya in the back. Understanding crossed her face. Would you like to come up here and talk about your work? Every instinct told Maya to say no. To stay in the back. To remain invisible. But then she thought about the past 2 weeks. About how it felt to be seen by someone who truly looked. About how she'd discovered that maybe being vulnerable wasn't the same as being weak. She stood up and walked to the front of the room. I helped with the observations, she said, her voice quiet but steady. The photographs. The captions. Alex helped me see that my perspective wasn't just different. It was valuable. Ms. Rodriguez smiled. It's more than valuable. It's remarkable. Both of you have created something that matters. After class, as they packed up their materials, Alex turned to Maya. You did it. You let yourself be seen. Just by one person. Just by Ms. Rodriguez. That's how it starts. Small steps. They walked out of the art room together, and Maya realized that for the first time in 3 years she wasn't walking alone by necessity. She was walking with someone by choice, and that made all the difference. In the weeks that followed, things didn't transform overnight. Maya didn't suddenly become social or join clubs or sit with the popular kids. But she did eat lunch with Alex sometimes. She did show up to art class events. She did let her guard down just enough to let a few other people in. Not everyone. Not quickly. But carefully, thoughtfully on her own terms. The project ended up winning a school art award, which meant it was displayed in the main hallway for a month. Every day Maya would walk past it, seeing students stop to look at her photographs and drawings, reading her observations about the invisible spaces of their shared world. Some people understood it. Some didn't, but that was okay. She hadn't created it for everyone. She'd created it to make sense of her own experience. The fact that it resonated with others was a bonus. One afternoon, a girl Maya didn't know stopped her in the hallway. "Hey, are you one of the artists behind that project? The Unseen Perspectives one?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you. I've been feeling really alone this year, and seeing that project made me realize other people understand." It helped. The girl walked away before Maya could respond, but her words stayed. Maya hadn't just created art. She'd created connection. She'd shown her truth, and it had helped someone else feel less alone. That night, Maya sat in her room looking at her notebooks full of observations and drawings. She'd filled these pages thinking no one would ever see them, thinking they were just her private way of processing her isolation. But now she understood that her perspective was valuable, not in spite of her isolation, but because of it. She'd seen things that others missed because she'd been looking from the outside. Her phone buzzed. Alex, sending a photo of them from that Saturday morning at school, both of them laughing at something surrounded by their art supplies. She looked happy in the photo. "Really happy. Thought you might want this," his message said. "Remember when you used to walk alone? Look at you now." Maya smiled and saved the photo. She did remember. She remembered the loneliness, the hurt, the walls she'd built. But she also remembered the moment Alex had waited outside the school to talk to her. The moment she'd decided to say yes to something scary. The moment she'd realized that being seen by the right person wasn't dangerous, it was healing. She would never be the most popular person at school. She would never be the life of the party or the center of attention, and that was okay. She'd found something better than popularity. She'd found authenticity, connection, friendship, a voice. She'd found herself by letting someone else see her, and as she looked at the photo of her and Alex, at the evidence of her own happiness, Maya realized something important. She wasn't the student who walked alone anymore. She was the student who'd learned to walk with someone, and that had made all the difference.